Let me turn it over to the United States Secret Service Acting Director, Ron Rowe.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yesterday afternoon, this country was reminded of the heightened and dynamic threat environment the United States Secret Service and its protectees face on a daily basis. Immediately following the assassination attempt of former President Donald J. Trump on July 13th, the Secret Service moved to increase assets to an already enhanced security posture for the former president. In the days that followed, President Biden made it clear that he wanted the highest levels of protection for former President Trump and for Vice President Harris. The Secret Service moved to sustain increases in assets and the level of protection sought. And those things were in place yesterday. At approximately 1:30 p.m., former President Trump was playing golf during an off-the-record movement to the Trump International Golf Course. A Secret Service advance agent supporting the front edge of the agency's layered approach to protection encountered an individual attempting to secrete himself in the woodline. This happened, the alleged gunman was on the public side of the fence near the 6th green. A layered approach of security is integral to the Secret Service's protective methodologies, and it's also the key to our success. As former President Trump was moving through the 5th fairway across the course and out of sight of the 6th green, the agent, who was visually sweeping the area of the 6th green, saw the subject armed with what he perceived to be a rifle and immediately discharged his firearm. The subject, who did not have line of sight to the former president, fled the scene. He did not fire or get off any shots at our agent. With reports of gunfire, the former president's close protection detail immediately evacuated the president to a safe location. The protective methodologies of the Secret Service were effective yesterday. The former president's protective apparatus allowed for the early identification of the threat and led to a safe evacuation. The increased assets directed by President Biden were in place yesterday. These included the counter-sniper team elements, counter-surveillance counter-surveillance agents on the exterior, counter-assault teams partnered with local tactical assets from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and counter-unmanned aerial system elements. All of these entities were present yesterday. And while all of these assets were in place, as I've said publicly, we must satisfy the basic requirements of the Secret Service's protective methodologies. In partnership with local law enforcement, we did just that. And the agents' hypervigilance and the detailed swift action was textbook. And I commend them and our partners for an exemplary response in keeping former President Trump safe. And I will tell you, having served in local law enforcement in Palm Beach County, I can state that I am tremendously impressed and appreciative for all of the efforts of the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Schneider with the Martin County Sheriff's Office. But what was critical to this was the quick reaction, the response, the hypervigilance of the men and women of the United States Secret Service, who since July 13th have been rising to meet an unprecedented and hyper-dynamic threat environment. And they are rising to this moment, and I could not be more proud of them and the way they have executed, not only yesterday, but what they're doing today and what they are doing tomorrow and what they will always do, because it is their duty. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, go slow here, folks. All right. Don't everybody do it at once. Ask who you want to answer the question, and then give the question.
I have a question for you, Director. Is there any evidence to suggest that the suspect knew that Donald Trump would be on the golf course at that time? And was the golf course searched thoroughly before the former president's arrival?
So at this time, it was an off-the-record movement, meaning it was not on the former president's official schedule. And what I go back to is the layered approach. The elements and the methodologies of the Secret Service. There was a front element. It did its job in sweeping ahead of the president. That's what identified this individual who was in that wood line. And the swift action of that agent doing his job, pushing out ahead, sweeping while the president was behind him several hundred yards and several holes away, out of sight from the gunman, did his job. And that was what alerted the detail, and the swift action is what triggered that.
First question, was there any evidence to suggest that the suspect knew that Donald Trump was going to be on that golf course at that time?
Based on what I know now, and it's an active investigation, I don't have any information on that.
Director Rowe. Director Rowe.
Harry Parker.
How many times did your agents go around the perimeter and scope out the golf course during the 12 hours that this guy was holed up in the shrubbery?
So this was an off-the-record movement. It wasn't a site that was on his scheduled. It wasn't part of his schedule. So there was no posting up of it because he wasn't supposed to have gone there in the first place.
Director Rowe. Director Rowe. Director Rowe. Have you briefed former President Trump on your findings so far, and has his campaign asked for any changes in his security going forward after yesterday?
So,
Over here.
sorry. So I've had a conversation with the former president. We've explained and we've worked with the campaign. The president is aware that he has highest levels of protection that the Secret Service is providing him.
No changes. No changes in specific reaction to what we saw yesterday.
We constantly evaluate based on threat. And yesterday, what we show is that our agents and our protective methodologies, and there's a lot of tactical assets in place, things that have been put in place as a result of what happened 60 days ago, those elements are working, and that demonstrates the redundancies that we have. And so we constantly evaluate. We'll of course, look at this and see what lessons learned from it. But as of right now, we are constantly evaluating that threat. And if we need to ratchet up additionally, we will.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do we know when Ralph arrived in Florida in general, when he arrived in Palm Beach, the area?
That's a question probably for the
Specifically,
FBI.
and if he's been at the golf course prior to this scoping it out?
We're in the process of collecting a lot of evidence, and that will be part of that investigation to determine his whereabouts going back quite some time. That's part of the investigation as well. Again, that's going to be a little bit challenged until we're able to determine the serial number on that gun. So we're hopeful to be able to do that. We're still looking into that.
The sheriff mentioned about the highest level of protection, that they would lock down the golf course. Was that a miscommunication then, being that President Biden ordered the highest level of protection?
Do you want to take this, Sheriff? Okay. So here's the deal. When it comes to Secret Service protection, we provide the highest level. So, for example, yesterday, counter-assault team elements. I'm not going to go into the number of personnel that we have out there, but we have the highest levels from Secret Service. When we work with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, like, for example, yesterday, during that emergency action response, we had their local tactical team assets partner with our local tactical team assets. We had their helicopter up in the air, providing us 360 and situational awareness of the overhead for if there were any potential threats coming at us. So what we did yesterday was exercise our emergency plan based on the number of tactical assets and the highest level of protection that we are providing. The sheriff and I have talked. Now, clearly, when you go down Southern Boulevard right now and you try to get over to Palm Beach and you see the robust presence that's existing outside of Mar-a-Lago, the heavy uniform presence, the additional assets of the Secret Service. And for those of you that were here in 2017, when the president was in office, when you look at that footprint now and you look at it today, there's not much difference there. There is heavy uniform presence out there. And again, what I go back to is yesterday was an off-the-record movement, off the record. And the president wasn't even really supposed to go there. It was not on his official schedule. And so we put together a security plan, and that security plan worked.